My mom gripped the steering wheel and locked eyes with me. "You're not getting a dime," she said flatly. I gave her a calm smile. "Then you shouldn't expect a single cent from me either." I quietly set my fork and knife down on the table and rose to my feet. A few weeks later, the real nightmare arrived. Noah leaned in, his tone slick with condescension. "Just so there's no mix-up," he said smugly. "We figured we'd tell you now. Everything's going to us." His words hit me like a blow to the stomach, catching me off guard. The lasagna on my plate, the one Mom claimed she made just to get me to come over, suddenly felt heavy and unappetizing. For a few seconds, the only sound was the faint hum of traffic drifting in from the quiet cul-de-sac outside. My pulse pounded in my ears as I looked across the polished cherrywood table at Noah and Nadia, my younger twin siblings. Both of them wore smug little smiles, their eyes gleaming with smug delight. "Excuse me?" I asked, my voice trembling despite my attempt to keep it steady. "What exactly do you mean by everything?" "Exactly what he said," Mom snapped, cutting in before Noah could answer. Her earlier smile had vanished, replaced by a stubborn tightness in her jaw. "Your father and I are finalizing the will," she said. "And we wanted to tell you face to face. The house, the lake property, the cottage, every bit of it is going to Noah and Nadia." I turned to Dad, searching his face for any flicker of uncertainty or a hint that this was some kind of sick joke. But he just stared down at his silverware, refusing to meet my eyes. The silence dragged out painfully until he finally spoke, his voice low and carefully measured. "Aaron, you have to try and understand," Dad said, folding his hands together on the table. "You've done incredibly well on your own. Your mother and I are proud of your career and all you've accomplished. But Noah and Nadia, they're still trying to figure things out. They need more help." I blinked rapidly, trying to push back the sting of tears. More help. For years, I'd taken on their financial problems in silence, believing that as the eldest, it was my responsibility. Their mortgage, Noah's never-ending college transfers, Nadia's impulsive and expensive hobbies, I'd quietly covered it all. But apparently, none of that meant anything now. I looked from one parent to the other, my heart twisting with a bitter ache. Their faces were closed off, hardened against me. This betrayal cut deeper than I ever could have imagined. "So this is what I get for covering your mortgage the past 4 years?" I asked, my voice low but steady. "For the tuition bills? The $34,000 I spent renovating that lake house last summer? You're cutting me out because I dared to get my life together." Mom let out a dramatic sigh and shook her head. "This is exactly why we hesitated to say anything," she said coldly. "You always make it about the money, Aaron. You never think about the family." A flush of heat rose to my face, and I clenched my fists under the table. "It was always about family," I said, my voice rising just slightly. "Every choice I made, every sacrifice, it was for family. Because you asked, Mom. Because you told me that family sticks together." Noah gave a sarcastic snort and leaned back in his chair, arms crossed like he'd just scored a point. "You're acting like you were some kind of martyr," he sneered. "Nobody forced you to help. You just love playing the hero." Nadia let out a quiet giggle and twirled a shiny strand of her hair, eyes narrowed in mock amusement. "Maybe you thought if you threw enough money at us, Mom and Dad would love you the way they love us." Her words were cruel, sharp, deliberate. They reopened a wound I'd spent years pretending had healed. My parents didn't say a word. They didn't correct her. They didn't even flinch. That silence hit harder than anything they could have said. They'd always shielded Noah and Nadia, always made excuses for them, no matter how selfish or reckless they were. And now here I was, after everything, painted as the greedy one. The anger surged inside me like fire, burning away any remaining patience. "You're right, Noah," I said at last, my voice firm. "Nobody made me help. But from this day forward, nobody gets to guilt me into being this family's ATM anymore. I'm done." I shoved my chair back and stood abruptly, ignoring the shocked expressions around the table. The scent of marinara and baked garlic still hung in the air, a cruel reminder of the night I thought might bring us closer. Instead, I'd walked right into a setup. A rejection. In the house I helped pay for. I grabbed my coat from the hallway, and as I pulled the door open, it slammed shut behind me with a final thud. The voices behind it faded into muffled noise. I didn't care what they were saying anymore. Outside, the chilly Portland air slapped me awake. It helped clear my head, but my chest still throbbed with disbelief and hurt. I climbed into my car, slammed the door shut, and gripped the steering wheel with shaky hands. Finally, the tears spilled down my face. During the quiet drive back to my apartment downtown, the memories poured in fast and painful. All the times I put them first, every financial favor, every missed trip, every late night I spent sorting out bills and spreadsheets to make sure they stayed afloat. I did it all silently, without expecting anything in return. Out of love. Out of obligation. But now, it all felt foolish. Back at home, my apartment seemed oddly distant, like something had shifted. As if that betrayal had contaminated everything. I poured myself a tall glass of Cabernet, the good one I'd been saving. Tonight's harsh reality felt like the kind of occasion it was made for. I sank into the couch and opened my banking app. There they were. $2,300 labeled parents' mortgage, $800 for their utilities. The numbers stared back at me like a slap. With a deep breath, I canceled both payments. A quiet surge of freedom rose in my chest as the confirmations popped up on the screen. As night fell, the whole dinner replayed itself in my head, looping endlessly. My anger softened into something heavier, sorrow. They hadn't just turned down my money, they'd rejected me, completely. That lifelong ache of feeling like I was always second best? Tonight, they confirmed it out loud. And yet, in the middle of all that pain, I felt something new begin to grow. A sense of release. A realization that I didn't need their approval to be worthy. It was time to take back control of my own life. To let go of the roles they forced me into. I knew my parents and the twins wouldn't let this slide easily. The phone would ring. The drama would come. But tonight was different. This was the line. No matter what they said or how hard they tried to drag me back in, I had made a promise to myself. I was done being their emotional punching bag. Done letting guilt masquerade as love. From that point on, I decided my life belonged to me and me alone. As I finished the last sip of wine, a bitter smile tugged at my lips, swallowed by the shadows in my apartment. They'd called me home to drop the bomb that everything had been handed to Noah and Nadia, but what they really gave me that night was something far more priceless. Freedom. Sleep didn't come easy. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, shrouded in dim light, my mind stuck in a relentless spin cycle of shock, pain, and fury. City lights blinked behind my curtains, uncaring and distant, while I tried and failed to process the emotional ambush I'd walked into. Every time I shut my eyes, the scene at that dinner table replayed like a cruel film, Noah's smug grin, Nadia's snide amusement, and worst of all, the dead, unreadable silence from my parents. That silence, so full of what they refused to say, cut deeper than any insult my siblings could have thrown. By morning, I was dry-eyed but hollow, my body heavy with fatigue. I crawled out of bed, brewed a pot of strong black coffee, and stared blankly at the kitchen table as the news mumbled quietly from the TV nearby. I wasn't hearing a word of it. Instead, my mind was flooded with memories, painfully vivid and crystal clear. Had I really missed the signs for all these years? Or had I simply chosen to ignore them, clinging to the desperate hope that they cared about me beyond what I could give? The buzz of my phone cut through the quiet like a slap. Mom's name lit up the screen. My stomach twisted in on itself, and I let the call go to voicemail. I wasn't ready, not emotionally, not mentally, to hear her voice just yet. A minute later, the notification flashed. Curiosity got the better of me. I hit play. Erin, stop being so dramatic. Her voice filled the room, part annoyed, part guilt-laced, all too familiar. Call me back. Family doesn't treat each other like this. A hollow laugh escaped before I could stop it. Family, her favorite tool of manipulation, polished and wielded like a weapon. Family only seemed to matter when it was their needs on the line. Without hesitation, I deleted the message and set my phone face down. I wasn't going to crumble beneath one of her emotionally loaded guilt trips, not this time. Over the next several days, the phone calls came in like clockwork. First Mom, then Dad. Eventually, even Noah and Nadia took their turns, switching between snarky lectures and phony-sounding pleas. But none of them sounded apologetic, not in the slightest. What I heard was annoyance. Frustration that their personal ATM had suddenly shut down. After one especially nasty call from Nadia, where she accused me of being jealous and dramatic, I finally snapped. Blocked them all. And for the first time in what felt like years, the quiet that followed was blissful, fragile, and new. Sure, but blissful all the same. Still, underneath that calm was a dull ache I couldn't quite shake, one I wasn't sure would ever go away. I buried myself in work. Everhart and Sloan Developments had just taken on a major project, a sleek medical office development out in Sacramento, and I threw myself into it like it was a lifeline. Design meetings, blueprint reviews, site walkthroughs, all the things I'd once juggled with ease now became distractions from the yawning silence that greeted me every night. I picked up extra assignments, volunteered to travel, stayed late more often than not. Anything to avoid going home and confronting the weight of what I'd lost. 3 weeks passed without a single direct message from them. Part of me started to hope, maybe, just maybe, they'd let it go. But a deeper part of me knew better. Then, on a Friday afternoon, my phone lit up with a text that made my chest tighten. "Family meeting tonight. Aaron, you owe it to us to be there." I stared at the words, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. Oh! I didn't owe them a damn thing. Not anymore. Still, some foolish part of me held onto a flicker of hope. Maybe this was an attempt at closure. Maybe they finally saw the damage they'd done. Before I could talk myself out of it, my thumbs typed one word. Fine. Pulling into the driveway, that evening felt like stepping onto enemy territory. Noah's overpriced motorcycle and Nadia's glaringly blue Kia sat smugly in the driveway, side by side, like trophies of indulgence. A familiar dread settled in my chest as I stepped toward the front door, once a place of comfort, now just another battleground. Mom greeted me with a strained smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Aaron, glad you came," she said coolly, motioning me inside. "Your Aunt Linda's here, too." That caught me off guard. Aunt Linda hardly ever got involved in family drama. She sat quietly in the corner of the living room, her expression soft but hesitant, as though she already knew how this would go. I took a seat across from her. My pulse thudded loud and fast. Noah and Nadia walked in a moment later, both shooting me cold glares. Dad cleared his throat and launched into it. "We asked you here to settle this, Aaron," he said, his tone clipped. "Your mother, and I figured you'd come to your senses by now." Seems we were wrong. I bit my tongue, knuckles white as I clenched my fists in my lap. "Come to my senses?" I said, voice trembling with rage. "You cut me out entirely after everything I did. I paid your mortgage. I covered college tuition. And now you want to talk about reason?" "Don't be so dramatic," Mom snapped, rolling her eyes. "You did your part, sure. That's what the oldest is supposed to do. Noah and Nadia needed support. It's not our fault you cared more about your career than your family." A bitter laugh tore out of me before I could stop it. "You think I chose work over family?" I asked, stunned. "I built a career because you relied on my paycheck. I gave up vacations, friendships, even a shot at a real relationship, so you could all keep pretending everything was fine." "Oh, please," Noah sneered. "We never asked for your charity." "That's right," Nadia chimed in, lips curling. "Maybe if you hadn't been so obsessed with playing the hero, you'd actually have a life of your own by now." The shame, the hurt, the heat of humiliation, it all surged at once. I could feel Aunt Linda shifting uncomfortably, her eyes darting between us, but she said nothing. And my parents? They didn't even blink. They just let it happen. I stood abruptly, my chair scraping harshly against the hardwood floor. "You're right," I said, voice tight. "The real mistake here was thinking I ever mattered to any of you. I won't make that mistake again." I turned toward the door. Just as I reached for the handle, Dad's voice stopped me cold. "If you walk out now, Aaron," he warned, "don't expect to come back." I froze, then slowly turned my head, my hand still gripping the doorknob. "That's fine," I said, my voice icy and clear, "because honestly, I've never felt welcome here anyway." Outside, beneath the pinpricks of stars, the cold air stung my skin as tears finally spilled over. Every step to my car felt heavier than the last. The truth settled into my chest like a stone. They never saw me as a daughter. Just a bank account with a heartbeat. Back at my apartment, I locked the door behind me with purpose. Whatever the silence was, it felt like armor now, something solid I could wrap around myself. And for the first time in my life, I intended to keep it on. A soft knock at the door jolted me upright, my pulse immediately kicking into overdrive. I crept to the peephole, nerves buzzing, and saw Aunt Linda standing there, her face lined with concern. Without a word, I opened the door and stepped aside. She didn't say anything right away, just wrapped me in a warm, steady hug that cut right through my defenses. "I'm so sorry, Erin," she murmured, her voice thick and trembling. "They're wrong. You didn't deserve any of this." Something inside me cracked open at her words, and the tears I'd bottled up for days came rushing out. She held me like only someone who truly cared could, no judgment, no questions, just quiet support as I let years of resentment and grief pour out. After a long stretch of silence, she finally pulled back slightly, her voice steadier now. "They'll never say it, but they're afraid. Not of you, of losing control. Of being forced to face what they've done." Her words echoed in my chest. For years, those automatic transfers had stared back at me like reminders of an invisible leash. $2,200 every month for the mortgage. $800 for bills. Then there were the countless other amounts, vague and recurring, all marked as family help. I remembered how many times I'd hovered over the cancel button, breath shaky, jaw clenched. Even now, guilt whispered familiar lies about duty, about love, about being the good daughter. I could still hear my mother's voice from years ago, like a spell cast on my conscience. "Family sticks together, Erin. Real family makes sacrifices." But tonight had burned all the illusions away. Their betrayal, so cold and calculated, made one thing painfully clear. I wasn't family to them. I was a wallet with a heartbeat. I closed my eyes, and in my mind, I saw Noah's smug face taunting me again. That was all it took. With one sharp click, the mortgage payment vanished from my account. Another click, and the utilities were done, too. Relief crashed through me like a wave. It was almost dizzying. For the first time in years, I wasn't their safety net. The weight I'd carried for so long had finally fallen off. Eventually, sleep claimed me where I sat. When I opened my eyes again, dawn had begun painting the Portland skyline in soft purples and golds. My phone buzzed violently on the coffee table, yanking me into the present. Dread tightened in my chest as I reached for it. "Of course, Mom." I answered on the third ring, already bracing myself. "What have you done?" she snapped, not even bothering with a hello. Her voice trembled with fury. "The bank just called. They're threatening foreclosure. You had no right." I took a deep breath, keeping my tone even. "No right," I repeated. "Mom, I paid that mortgage because I chose to. I did it voluntarily. But after everything you said, I'm done being your personal bailout. We're your parents," she shrieked. "You owe us respect." "No," I said, my voice sharper now. "Respect isn't a one-way street. You made your decision, and now I'm making mine." She tried again, this time her tone desperate, almost panicked. "Erin, please." "I'm sorry you're upset," I cut her off, my voice cool and final. "But I can't keep doing this. Goodbye." And I ended the call before she could say another word. My hands were shaking, but the weight in my chest had lifted. The phone didn't stop after that. Call after call from Dad, from Nadia, even from distant relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. Each one tried a different tactic: guilt, anger, shame, manipulation. But none of it worked. Eventually, I muted the phone completely. The silence that followed felt like my own small revolution. In the weeks that followed, things began to settle. My life slowly found a new rhythm. Work wasn't just a distraction anymore, it actually felt good again. I finally booked that trip to Italy I'd been dreaming about for years. It felt surreal to spend money on myself, for once, without guilt eating me alive. There was a new lightness in my life, even if the nights still felt a little hollow. Loneliness sometimes crept in like a cold draft, a reminder of the family I had cut away. But even that ache felt cleaner than the old one. Then came Sacramento. A 3-day trip to wrap up final inspections on our latest medical office build. The timing was perfect, just enough to clear my head and give me space. I got back late Friday night, my suitcase dragging behind me as fatigue settled heavy in my bones. But the second I reached my hallway, I froze. Something was off. As I got closer, it became horrifyingly clear. My door was sealed shut, thick, dried foam stuffed into every crack, bulging grotesquely around the frame. My stomach dropped. I reached out to touch it. It was solid, hardened, sprayed deliberately to block entry. Panic flared, then quickly gave way to seething rage. There was only one person petty and vicious enough to pull something like this. Noah. I immediately called the building manager and paced the hallway, teeth clenched, waiting nearly 2 hours for the emergency locksmith. When he finally arrived, he took one look and shook his head. Someone went out of their way to make sure you couldn't get back in, he muttered as he began scraping the foam away bit by bit. By the time he was done, it was almost midnight. But I was too wired to sleep. Fueled by fury, I marched straight to my computer. My hallway camera. I'd forgotten. Hands trembling, I pulled up the footage. There he was. Noah. Baseball cap pulled low, hood up, face partially hidden, but it was him. No mistaking the posture, the build, the malicious gleam in his eyes as he vandalized my door. Watching it made my stomach turn. This wasn't just bitterness. It was personal, cruel, calculated. I hit save and backed up the file twice, my hands shaking. And then I just sat there, staring at the screen. Could I really report my own brother? Was I ready to take that step? But this wasn't a sibling argument. This was destruction. Harassment. Criminal. I called Aunt Linda. She answered instantly, voice gentle but unwavering. If you let him get away with this, she said softly, he'll just keep going. Holding him accountable isn't being cruel. It's the only way he'll ever learn. Her words grounded me. The next morning, I marched into the police station with the footage in hand. Filed the report. The reaction from my family was swift and vicious. Voicemails poured in. Furious. Condemning. They called me cold, heartless, a traitor to my own blood. But underneath all that rage, I could hear it fear. The panic of realizing that I meant business. That their hold on me was broken. Noah was facing real consequences now. Unless he paid for the damage, charges were coming. Finally, my dad called. His voice was brittle, strained with barely disguised panic. What do you want, Aaron? He asked. What'll it take for you to drop this? For 1,000, I replied, without missing a beat. The exact cost of repairs. That's extortion, he snapped. I didn't flinch. No, I said coldly. It's restitution. Actions have consequences, I said firmly. Noah vandalized my home. He can either pay for it or face the charges. It's his decision. Dad hung up on me without another word. The next morning, I woke up to find a bank transfer notification. Exactly $4,000, bitterly labeled final payment. The money didn't matter half as much as what it symbolized. For once, they had to face the fact that I wouldn't just roll over and forgive. They had to acknowledge, if only begrudgingly, that their actions came with real-world consequences. Noah's immature sabotage hadn't broken me. It had clarified everything. That act of spite only solidified my freedom and reinforced the truth. I wasn't their puppet anymore. Standing in the doorway of my repair department at work later that week, I paused for a moment. I took a deep breath and let it out slowly, savoring the quiet victory. They tried to hurt me, humiliate me, but all they did was set me free. Now, for the first time in years, I was finally building a life that belonged to me alone. On my terms. After the incident with Noah, the silence from my family was absolute. No calls, no texts, no apologies, not even a fake one. At first, I welcomed the quiet like a breath of fresh air. But over time, it started to hang heavy. Their silence wasn't peace, it was absence. And deep down, I knew what it really meant. They'd chosen a side again, and I wasn't it. Then the whispers started. Aunt Linda called one night, her voice low and urgent. Aaron, she said, your mom's been spreading lies. Telling people you abandoned them. That you're making them homeless. My stomach nodded instantly. That's insane, I whispered, gripping the phone tight. She knows exactly why I stopped. They left me no other option. I know, Linda said gently. But most people don't. She's twisting the story to make herself the victim. No, they're calling you selfish. Saying you walked away out of greed. Her words stung like acid. All those years I'd bent over backward to support them, gone. Erased in one self-serving narrative. The vacations I'd never taken. The relationships I'd sacrificed. The nights I'd spent alone, solving their problems while they lived freely. Now I was being painted as the villain? That night, I paced the apartment, rage and sadness colliding inside me. Enough was enough. I sat down at my laptop and started typing. No more silence. No more playing the good daughter while they rewrote history. I wrote it all out, every painful detail. The years of mortgage payments, the tuition bills for Noah, the endless emergencies from Nadia, even the vandalism and how I had to file a police report against my own brother. I hit post before I could second-guess myself. It was terrifying, but it was also honest. Within minutes, the reactions started flooding in. Some people were shocked. Others reached out with support and sympathy, telling me how brave I was for speaking up. But not everyone was kind. A handful criticized me, accused me of airing dirty laundry and shaming my own family. Then the voicemail came. Mom. Furious. How dare you humiliate us like this? You had no right. Her outrage sparked something primal in me. I called her back immediately, hands shaking. No right. I snapped. You told everyone I was selfish. That I abandoned you. After everything I've done? You don't get to rewrite the truth just to protect your pride. You walked away, she hissed. Just because we wanted to help your siblings. No, I corrected, voice unsteady but strong. You walked away the moment you decided my sacrifices didn't count. You chose to raise Noah and Nadia with entitlement instead of responsibility. And now you're reaping what you sowed. You've torn this family apart, she whispered coldly. No, I said softly. That was your doing. Then I hung up. Tears stung my eyes, blurring the room. Was I really the one who destroyed this family? Or had I simply refused to let them keep destroying me? A knock at the door pulled me out of my spiral. It was Aunt Linda. Without a word, she wrapped me in a hug that said more than any speech ever could. Aaron, she murmured as she stepped inside, your post changed everything. People finally know the truth. Your mom kept your generosity hidden all these years. They had no clue what you were carrying. I exhaled slowly, a mix of sadness and relief washing over me. Does it even matter now? I asked quietly. Yes, she said firmly, squeezing my hand. It matters. Because your story deserves to be told. And you deserve to be heard. Her words rooted deep inside me, soothing the raw parts of my heart. Slowly, the heaviness began to lift. The shame faded, and something else took its place. Hope. A few days later, my phone buzzed. A text from Nadia. Thanks a lot. Everyone hates us now. Hope you're proud. I stared at the message, feeling nothing. Not guilt. Not sorrow. Just clarity. I'd spent so many years twisting myself into knots for their approval. Chasing love that came with strings and hidden costs. But now I saw it clearly. Their love was always conditional. I typed back calmly, fingers steady. I'm done apologizing for your behavior. Maybe this will finally teach you some accountability. She never responded. Weeks passed. The noise died down. The judgments from distant relatives faded into silence. Without my financial support, my parents were forced to face reality. They picked up part-time jobs, started dealing with the debt they used to ignore. Noah stayed true to form, reckless and unaccountable. Nadia wandered aimlessly, angry and unchanging. Meanwhile, my life took root in new ways. For the first time, every decision I made was mine. I wasn't funding anyone else's chaos. I wasn't sacrificing myself to keep their illusion alive. The freedom wasn't just financial, it was emotional. I'd walked through the fire of betrayal and come out stronger than I ever thought I could be. They thought cutting me out of the will would crush me. But the irony is, that decision gave me the greatest gift I never saw coming. The courage to finally choose myself. 7 months later, the shadows of my family's toxicity no longer hovered over my life. It wasn't easy. At first, the quiet echoed like a ghost. But over time, the sharp ache dulled. And in its place? A quiet, profound sense of peace. I threw myself into work, and it paid off. I landed a promotion, my own corner office, and a salary I once only dreamed of. Now, my paycheck belonged entirely to me. No mortgage payments disappearing into someone else's life. No midnight bailouts for Noah. No desperate deposits for Nadia's latest whim. Every dollar I earned was mine. And with each one, I built a life that was finally, truly free. It needed to happen. With my finances finally untangled from my family's grip, I did something I'd put off for far too long. I booked myself a 3-week getaway to Italy. I'd always dreamed of it, but kept pushing it aside, guilt whispering that I didn't deserve to spend that kind of money on myself. But now, the guilt was gone. One evening, I found myself standing on a balcony in Florence, the golden sunset draping the rooftops in soft light, the city glowing beneath a lavender sky. And for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, I felt free. Joy wasn't weighed down by duty anymore. There was no nagging voice in my head reminding me of bills I needed to cover or emergencies I needed to fund. When I returned home, I joined a local hiking group, something else I'd always wanted to do but never made time for. For years, my weekends had been stolen by family crises and silent sacrifices. Now, I was reclaiming them. It was on one of those hikes that I met Daniel. His smile was easy, his words thoughtful, his presence quietly grounding. Where my family had left a void of cold indifference, Daniel brought warmth and patience. He didn't try to fix me, he just stood beside me, and that was enough. As the months passed, my life softened into something I hadn't thought possible, peaceful, grounded, whole. Until one cold evening in November when another knock broke the quiet. I opened the door to find Aunt Linda standing there in her favorite knit sweater, holding 2 paper cups of coffee. She didn't say anything at first, just stepped inside and pulled me into a hug. "I'm proud of you, Erin," she said, voice catching with emotion. "You deserve every bit of happiness that finds you." We sat together on the couch, the warmth of the coffee cups between us. After a while, she spoke again, her voice quiet and steady. "Your parents, they're still blaming you for everything. They haven't changed. And honestly, I don't think they ever will. But you? You've grown. You made a hard choice. That's not selfish, that's brave." I nodded, swallowing hard. "I still think about them," I admitted, eyes stinging. "Not because I regret walking away. I don't. But it hurts knowing I loved them so deeply, and they never really loved me the same way." Linda reached over and squeezed my hand. "Sweetheart," she said, her eyes soft. "Sometimes family isn't who you're born to, it's who shows up. Who sees you. Who respects you. That's what matters." Her words wrapped around me like a balm I didn't know I still needed. Something inside me, something long hollow, felt a little more whole that night. We stayed up talking for hours, laughing, sharing old memories, even crying a bit. And in that space between grief and comfort, I finally understood. Family isn't defined by blood. It's defined by love, by honesty, by mutual care. In the weeks that followed, I started to hear things, little updates from extended family and friends of friends. Mom had taken a job working early shifts at a nearby diner. She looked exhausted, they said. The lines on her face deeper than ever. Dad had taken a job at a hardware store, manual labor, way too hard on his aging body. Noah had quit yet another job, still refusing to take responsibility for anything. Nadia was still chasing her influencer fantasy, snapping photos in rented outfits and calling it a brand. But none of it was going anywhere. That Christmas Eve, instead of mourning what I'd lost, I chose to celebrate what I'd built. I invited friends over, the ones who'd stood by me, who showed up without strings attached. Aunt Linda came too, her eyes twinkling as she watched me in this new version of my life. A version I never thought I'd earn. Later that night, after the last guest had left, I stood at the window, looking out at the lights scattered across Portland. The pain of what my family had done was still there. It probably always would be. But now it was a scar, not a wound. Something that had healed enough to live with, something that shaped me, but didn't define me. They tried to punish me by cutting me out of the will. But in doing so, they gave me something so much more valuable. Freedom. In the end, their rejection didn't ruin me, it released me. They left everything they had to Noah and Nadia. And in doing so, they left me with something even greater. The power to finally choose myself. And now I ask you, if you were in my place, what would you have done? Would you have kept pouring your energy and money into people who only took? Or would you have walked away, even if it meant losing your family for good? Let me know in the comments. I really want to hear your story too.